Hey, this is Steve Halleck of TikToking. As always, I'm at Steve Halleck on Instagram. I'm at TikToking.com. I'm all over the place, so find me wherever you like to be. And today I'm going to do something different. I had these incredibly cool 3 FP Journe resonances out the other day to take photos. I've been looking all over to find the best examples of resonances. I'm super picky on dials and, all these things, and I found I just happen to have these 3 at the same time. So I just wanted to show you all of them, and we'll kind of look at some cool things about them. We'll keep it quick, and that'll be it. So again, all 3 Francois Paul Journe resonances. You can see the power reserve ran down on all these, so they're at different times and stuff like that. They were at the same time, but don't get hung up on that. Let's start with the most traditional version, which is the platinum with yellow gold dial. So this is kind of the signature Journe coloring, and you can see the dial on this one is super grainy, sparkly, light catching. It has the silver subdials. It's a very early case number, and these are sort of the most desirable and starting to be very, very difficult to find. I have seen a lot of Journes in my time, and I look at a lot of dials. This happens to be probably the nicest yellow gold dial that I've seen. And people are starting to realize that there is a lot of variation in the dials, and just because I like this one better, and a lot of collectors do. Some people might like the more yellowy ones better. Some people might like the whiter subdials better. There's no right answer, but these do tend to be from the earliest production, and they're kind of accepted to be the kind of grail pieces. Now they are starting to garner a real premium for that dial. So for example, this dial is going to be much more expensive than just your standard more matte, more yellow resonance with the whiter subdials and those sorts of things, the later production pieces. But again, like anything else, this is a very, very early piece from the brand, and these little details can make a big difference with regard to value. But I just want to keep moving it so you can see. Another thing with these dials is kind of the earlier they are, and one of the problems and the reason why Francois Paul Journe stopped producing these dials and changed to the more matte ones, the more yellow ones, and whatever, is they do tend to tarnish, and you can see tarnish spots on them often, which actually doesn't bother me. Normally they're pretty small, and they're not really a big deal, but it is something that you see a lot, and this one happens to not really have any of that, so it's kind of particularly nice in that way. But really, I don't mind that when I find them, as long as it's not crazy. And I've never seen one that's super bad. But if they have some spots on them and whatever, it's not a big deal. They're always gonna pick that sort of thing up. Okay, so that's the platinum with yellow gold dial, and you can see brass movement, early pieces. That's that one. All right. Another early piece, this one is actually quite a bit more rare, and this is an early rose gold piece with a very nice sparkly white gold dial. Now, I don't know the exact production numbers. I don't know that they've ever been released, but the rose gold cases are way more rare than the platinum cases. You very, very rarely see them come up, and especially these really early ones with the shinier, grainier dials. I'd be surprised if there are more than tens of them that are around. I've never seen one better than this. Also, generally first of all, you don't see a lot of rose gold resonances at all, but normally they're later pieces and they have the flatter whiter dial, less silvery, and a lot of times with the whiter subdials, not the silver subdials. So you can see, again, this is a really nice shiny dial. You can see how it gets super silvery and almost mirror-like, kind of similar to the ruthenium dial. If you watch my full resonance review that I used a ruthenium piece with, although these are a little bit less, definitely less sparkly, and they're less gray. When they really pick up the light, they get very white and light silvery, whereas the ruthenium is darker. And the ruthenium go to almost black, and these, when they get dark, you can see they almost have a greenness to them, or a very medium shade gray. So there's definitely a difference between the white gold and the ruthenium dials, but these early ones, at least the pretty sparkly ones, are similar. So again, this is extremely rare in this version, and yet it's still not quite as desirable in general as the platinum yellow gold, just because that's the kind of quintessential Journe. But I think that over time, people are going to start to notice how rare these are, and maybe put a little bit more attention on them. But here you can see them together. These are both very early resonances, and represents the beginning of François Paul Journe, the brand, and what they were doing at the time. Now, a few years later, they changed into the gold movements, and in 2006, they did a limited series of 12 pieces for the Tokyo boutique in titanium, and this is that piece. So these are just smoking rare, right? Most of them never made it out of Japan to begin with. You almost never see them hit the secondary market. But here we have one, right? So this piece came from the original owner, and I actually sold another one a while ago, and now I have this one, and I don't expect another one to hit the market for quite a while. They tend to bury themselves deep in personal collections. But it's a pretty unique piece amongst the Journe range, right? It's got a titanium case, which is clearly not a usual thing for them. It's 40 millimeters versus the 38 of these pieces. So just so you can see the difference in the cases. It's not very dramatic. I mean, the main thing is just the bezel is a little bit thicker on these 40 millimeter ones. So when you look at them, when you look at a picture, you can pretty easily tell which is a 40 and which is a 38 if you're used to seeing them just by the bezel. But on the wrist, they don't really make a huge difference. And you can look at my tourbillon videos and resonance videos and whatever to see those comparisons. I did these without straps just because that's what I was doing with the photo shoot, and I didn't want the straps to be distracting. And I actually think watches look really cool without their straps. So, but you can see on the titanium pieces, they used rose gold hands, rose gold crowns, and this sort of gold/orange lettering. And it gives a totally different look to the watch. The watch is much more kind of chill. It's way less dressy, much more casual. Of course, it depends what strap you put on it, but it gives a cool kind of subdued look, but definitely still pops. The rose gold, I think, in these doesn't really give a two-toneness to it so much. Like, some people have a problem with two-tone watches. I don't personally have that problem, but I don't think this in person looks really like a two-tone watch. It just looks like some accent, and if anything, it comes across as more like an orange and gray than it does, like a two-tone Submariner or something, dumb like that. Also in the resonance, the rose gold crowns are a little bit less pronounced than the other pieces, only because this crown up here is of course at 12 o'clock, so when you have a strap, it's like mainly covered, and it's very, very thin. And then this crown is, down here, so rather than have the big crown right here of the tourbillon and the chronomètre souverain and Senograph and whatever, it's down here, right? So you kind of don't see it as much when you look at the watch, and that can be to your liking or not. But most people go pretty gaga over this version, so it seems to have worked. Now, here you have the rose gold resonance movement, which I think looks particularly awesome with this titanium case, because you've got the kind of darker titanium and then the contrast with the gold, and it's just a beautiful movement. So I'll show you. Let's look at the gold movement versus the brass movement, and then we'll be done with all of this. So you can see there, movement's more or less the same. You can see they changed a couple things here or there, but in general it does the same thing. You can do your own little challenge to find the differences for yourself. I think that all else equal, the gold movement is prettier than the brass movement. But of course, the brass movement are the early pieces, and they have a certain charm to them. And the gold movement are sort of the more polished up later pieces. But to me, these Tokyo Boutique versions are, the be-all, end-all of Journe limited editions. This is like kind of the ultimate modern Journe as far as I'm concerned, whereas here you have the kind of ultimate vintage Journe, as it may be. I mean, it's crazy to think of a vintage Journe, but these really are becoming kind of like special vintage pieces. So this is probably a threesome you're not going to see again, and I hope you enjoyed it. Here we again have the early rose gold with shiny white gold dial, the early platinum with shiny yellow gold dial, and the Tokyo Boutique titanium resonances. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is really one for the Journe nerds. So Journe nerds unite, and I'll see you guys soon.